Welcome back to sample book 5, our knit sample. So we are now have our pieces cut out. I cleaned them up after I got them away from the bulk of the fabric. So if you ever kind of forget which side's the front and which one's the back, on these, the front is going to have the bigger neckline. See how like when we line up kind of these shoulders, we have this bigger swoop. That's going to be the front. Because what we're going to do now is we are going to be using our overlocker and we're going to serge the shoulder seams at 1/4 inch seam allowance and we are going to press those to the front. So we're going to line up one at a time. And so we're going to have line up our notches and we are going to run these through the overlocker at each shoulder seam, and then we will go to the back. And some people also, if you get really confused, you can just take your tailor's chalk or pencil and write front and back or FV on your pieces. So here we are at our overlocker. And I'm using the white one just so it's easier to see on camera. You can use any of these because this is just how we are using them. So while we're using the overlocker, from the get-go on our shoulder and side seams is what happens with a knit fabric and why you need specialty machines is since the fabric stretches, that stitch also needs to stretch with it. It needs to stretch and come back. So a regular lock stitch machine, you're not going to have that, right? It stays in place. So if we sew these where there's going to be a lot of movement, they're just going to pop the instant this fabric stretches, especially since the one is a really stretchy fabric. It has a little bit of a lycra spandex in it. So overlockers, because of when you have all 4 threads, there is going to be some stretch and give into that so it can move around. So that is one of the things you can use. The official machine that you would use is a cover stitch machines. Those are very expensive, and unless you just do a lot of knitwear sewing, are typically just not going to have it. You're more likely going to have a overlocker. You can also, last alternative, if you really need to sew a knit and you don't have an overlocker, but you have a residential machine, is you can use a zigzag stitch and make sure you're using kind of those special needles. So there's stretch needles. And what that is they're also referred to as ballpoint needles. So their point is a little different so that when it's going through the knit fabric, it makes it a little bit easier on you in sewing wise. So we can do those on the industrial machine because they only do a lock stitch. So you can buy ballpoint needles because you can use ballpoint needles for other things. But on the industrial machine, since that just has a lock stitch, that part is kind of a moot point. So we're now going to overlock. And so I'm not going to be trimming that much off. Just a little hair. Make sure you have your chain at the beginning and you're going to leave a chain at the end. So we don't want to stretch this as we're going through. We just want to hold it in place because you want it to be able to move on its own. So if you already sew that in with a stretch, it's going to contort because now the seams where there's already pressure because of the thread are now pulled to their tautus, but the middle of the fabric isn't. So we don't want to stretch as we're going. We just want to hold it in place. And so just like our hem, you might have to curve out just a little bit. We leave that chain. And we cut. And we cut. And so we do this to our other shoulder seam. And I will try, like I said, I've said this before when we're talking about the overlocker. I really cannot do the skill. And since there's other seams that always kind of come into play, it's not as much, but I'll try and show you what, in theory, what like how you would kind of like backstitch. And it is pretty hard at the beginning. I don't even know if I want to try it in the beginning. I think I'll show it because I usually can get it done a little bit more at the end. But the main thing is like, especially like these, we're going to be sewing both the arm side and the neckline down. So it's already going to kind of be securing itself. You don't, and the overlocker is really kind of already secure because there is so many threads going in. So theoretically, you have like a little bit of a chain. And then you like bring it up. You'll bring up your presser foot. And you bring it, and you're going back over like just like the last little bit. Like I said, that's theoretically how kind of the steps are supposed to happen when you backstitch on an overlocker. I have never been able to master that trick. If anyone can and can help me, that would be great. But you really don't need it because of everything else that's going on with an overlocker, and once again, because we're going to be doing other things with the seams. I also just usually don't like how it looks because it looks just kind of like a little wadded ball. And I'm not a fan of that. So, but that's what we're going to do. And so we're going to go and we're going to press these to the front where that bigger neckline is. So like when you press it, you'll go and we'll just press those down. And so you can see here in the back, this is why you want to be really careful when you're cutting your notches, because I actually have not covered. So like I actually have a hole because my notch is still there. So for this, what I would recommend then is I'm just going to go back and I'm going to, actually that's pretty, like that's going to take too much. Okay. So that's why you always want to be careful with your notches. And then, you know, honestly for this, if you kind of skip the notches altogether, you'll probably be fine. Or you could just mark it with your tailor's chalk. But I'm going to press these to the front. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to fold my neckline, and you want, because you know this is our outside, this is what we want. So we're folding it inwards. So where the gray is now on the side of the black. And we're going to fold it about 1/4 inch. It can even be 3/8 of an inch. And then we are going to top stitch our neckline down. And I'm going to go, I'll do that, and then I will be back.